Welcome to episode 121 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. It is Tuesday, the 29th. We're here, I don't even know how many hours after this crushing defeat the Ravens suffered to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jake is back with us this week. I needed someone to vent with. I couldn't do this by myself. So Jake is back, and we've got a lot to get into with this Ravens and Chiefs game. I don't even know what to say. I mean, this just, they got embarrassed on national TV. So much hype going into this game, and it was crushing. So I won't waste any more time. Let's get right into it. And the big topic of the day, and it's unfortunately what we're going to hear all week, until the Ravens play Washington on Sunday. Everyone's going to be talking about it. You know, are the Ravens really legit? Are they going to choke in big games? Blah, blah, blah. How worried are you? Are we panicking? Are we not panicking? What's the mood less than 24 hours after this loss?
I wouldn't call it like a full-on panic because, I mean, it is only, week 3 of the season. But, as I said, I was texting my dad a little bit about this earlier. Like, it's a concerning pattern that we've been seeing from the Ravens here a couple of times now, where it's either, a playoff game or a game against an opponent like Kansas City. You have the home field. Of course, there is no crowd, just very unfortunate. They did have some friends and family of the players and coaches there. But to, again, see this team not even look like they're on the same level as an opponent of the Chiefs' caliber, who, has given Lamar Jackson 3 of his, 4 regular season losses in his career now. It's very similar set of circumstances as far as the game planning and what the Chiefs were able to throw both offensively and defensively at the Ravens. You also heard Lamar say after the game that the Chiefs had a very similar game plan as the Titans did in that playoff loss. So whatever, the similarities are between what those two teams are doing to the Ravens in these situations, once they fall behind and once, they're able to stop, the run. And really, I mean, I think the Ravens stopped themselves a lot in the passing game with all the drops we saw. Yeah, just not a good recipe for success. Obviously, they fell behind in a very big hole, and a lot like last year, they made a little bit of a comeback. They didn't come as close as they did last year to making it a 5-point differential. But the score, even it was a 2-touchdown difference, but still that might have been even a little bit too close of representative of what, actually the results were of the game. So yeah, very, a concerning pattern. But I mean, really what this game said to me was just how far, ahead Kansas City is from everybody else. I mean, unless Mahomes tears his ACL or suffers a significant injury and misses a long period of time, it's hard not to imagine the Chiefs repeating as Super Bowl champions as of this time. Maybe somebody in the NFC like the Seahawks has something to say about it. But as things are now, and yes, it's only week 3, but I mean, that game really said to me, as John Harbaugh said after the game, right now, the Chiefs are just light years ahead of the Ravens. And I guess I wanted to ask you, we'll probably get into this, but I've heard, Clay Matthews' name a lot today. And I've also heard Antonio Brown's name a lot today. After last night, what do you think about those 2 names in particular?
I'm going to say no to both of them. We don't need them. It's just complete overreaction. I mean, I'm
not hearing that from the fan. I'm hearing that from people on the air, like on multiple outlets.
No, I mean, I won't say it's incorrect. I just don't think we need them. For the Ravens to go out and make them, I mean, Clay Matthews is one thing. I think that's completely different than Antonio Brown. We've been through this stuff with Antonio for, it feels like years, but it's only been months. Yeah. And I think we're over that at this point. We had a terrible game with the receivers dropping passes left and right. That doesn't mean you need to sign Antonio Brown. I'm not going that far. But Clay Matthews is a different story. I'm still going to say no. He's been on the street a little too long here, didn't have a proper offseason. If you bring him in, he's not going to play, a bunch of snaps right away. And really, where do you put him? I mean, honestly, Bowser's playing pretty damn well. We'll get into the defense. I think Bowser's been good. Judon doesn't have a sack yet, but he's getting sent on all these different blitz packages. He's fine. He'll get his eventually. And then obviously Campbell and Wolf have been good to great. So I don't know. I'm going to say no to both of them. But as far as my mood on this game, it was just a disappointing loss. There's nothing. I can't make any sweeping statements about this. I'm not panicking, obviously. It's not a playoff game. It's just week 3. We saw the Ravens get beat pretty badly by the Browns last year in, what was that? That was week 3. So a lot can happen between now and the end of the season, and I think we all can agree that the Ravens are going to go on a run, probably in the next 3 weeks. They may lose some more games down the stretch, obviously. I'm not saying they're going to win 12 in a row like they did last year, but they're going to be in the postseason. They're going to be in a position to go far, and I'm not that concerned. But the only thing that I did want to mention as a cause for concern is really what did we hear all week for the build up to this game? Not just in Lamar versus Mahomes, but all we heard from Ravens fans was, well, this defense is not the same defense that Mahomes tore apart the last 2 times. It's a completely different defense. Marcus Peters is here. He played one of the worst games he's played as a Raven, Peters. You got Chuck Clark at safety and Deshaun Elliott instead of Earl Thomas and Tony Jefferson or Eric Weddle back in 2018. Completely revamped defense, and on paper should have been better. They played awful. Outside of a couple guys here or there, I thought Calais Campbell had a fantastic game. Some other guys, I thought Bowser was pretty good. Came this close to making a game-changing play. But everyone else was pretty bad, and Peters was abysmal. We'll get into the defense later, but I did want to point that out because everyone said that Mahomes wasn't going to go off because the Ravens defense was actually legit, and they turned in just an awful performance. So that's my only cause for concern, and I just don't want to face the Chiefs again. If there's ends up being a rematch in the postseason, I'm assuming it's going to be in the AFC Championship game, unless the Ravens or the Chiefs lose a bunch of games and you end up getting a first-round matchup. If these teams meet again this year, it will be in the AFC Championship. I don't want to face them again, but it would be the AFC Championship game, and you're in a position to go to the Super Bowl. I have my concerns facing the Chiefs, but there's no reason to panic about the Ravens right now. And I guess with that, you kind of mentioned it, but the whole big games argument, that's all I'm hearing today. It started after the game last night, and it's going to continue all week. People saying that the Ravens don't win big games for some reason. I'll let you go in a second, but this has just riled me up so much today. I don't know how you can call this game against the Chiefs a big game and then turn around and completely ignore last year's big games, or what I would consider a big game. People will call this game a big game and not call the Sunday night game against the Patriots last year a big game. Or they won't call the Seattle game, the San Francisco game. They'll completely ignore those. But then they'll pinpoint this one because it's a loss. Or even going back to 2018. What about the last 2 weeks of the year? They had to beat a really good Chargers team on the road on a Saturday night. That was a short week. They went in there. They were the underdog. They won that game. And then they come back in week 17 and they have another must-win game against the Browns, and they pulled that off. After 3 years in a row of choking in week 17, I don't know how it gets any bigger than that. That's the biggest game, maybe one of the biggest games in recent years, and they won it. So I'm sorry. This whole big games narrative, throw it in the trash. If you want to get on them for being 0-2 in the playoffs, that's fine. I'm with you. They've been bad in the playoffs, but don't start this narrative of the Ravens or Lamar choking in big games when he won and this team as a whole won a bunch of big games last year and in 2018 down the stretch.
I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, now, for, those who haven't known, I'm in Hanover, residing here now in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And Tyler, who has written articles for the site in the past and has appeared on the podcast from time to time, way back when, season ticket holder. He lives roughly a mile from where I live now. So I've been driving over to his house and watching the games, every Ravens game with him and his dog. And I brought up that point last night, basically the same point you just brought up, saying like, hey, it'd be, it's a shame because it's not like the Ravens haven't played well lately. It's because like you said, games like the Patriots last year and the Seahawks and the 49ers, those are big games and they've played well in those situations. And Tyler didn't disagree with me at all, but he came back and said a lot of people, it's still not going to matter because the game last night, the Ravens are, going back to this point. Yeah, they've played well in some of those other games, but they haven't played well in playoff games and they haven't played well against the Chiefs. And those are the two most important things that people are going to point to because of the Chiefs being the Super Bowl champion and because of the Ravens, stinking in the playoffs the last 2 years. So I understand, the frustration where you're coming from because it's easy to forget. It seems like games like the Seattle game, the San Francisco game are the two ones that pop in my mind the most, along with the Patriots game. But yeah, there's still the playoffs and the Chiefs, which are, now becoming like the cream of the crop of the NFL in a lot of people's eyes. But yeah, 100% agree with you there that, it's inconvenient at the times of when this conversation keeps popping up. But I wouldn't be so quick to say that, the Ravens don't play well in big games because they have. It's just, these two specific scenarios here with the postseason and the Chiefs, they just haven't yet.
Right, and I'm looking at that 49ers game, and maybe the Seahawks too, but mostly the 49ers because I saw that game build almost the same way as this Ravens and Chiefs one. Obviously there's more intrigue here. It's Monday Night Football. They're trying to make this Lamar and Mahomes into Brady versus Manning, Super Bowl MVP versus regular season MVP. On paper, it's great. But that 49ers game last year, I mean, if that was a primetime game, that would have been hyped up to oblivion. I mean, it was a 1 o'clock game on a Sunday, and the narrative all week was pretty big. Like, everyone was saying this could be a potential Super Bowl preview. These are the two best teams in the entire NFL. And it ended up being like a weird game. It was raining, just terrible weather. But the Ravens come out on top, win on a Justin Tucker field goal. Great game, grinded it out. They were down at one point, not big, but they were down. Lamar had a bad fumble, I think, at one point in that game, and they bounced back and they won. That was a huge win. They could have lost and been just fine, but still, the moment of that game was huge. And Seattle as well. I mean, the fact that you go on the road to Seattle, everyone was calling that a loss. There's no way the Ravens are going to go in there and win. The 12th man and everything, they can't win that game. They went in there and, after they went for it on that 4th down and scored a touchdown, they just cruised to a victory. So, yeah, I'm not concerned about the Ravens in big games. We have a long way to go before the postseason starts, and when that comes, we can have the discussion again. But, look, the Chiefs, they won this game. Therefore, they are the team to beat in the AFC. We shall see. I mean, I'm not going to go.
Let's be honest here. Let's be honest here, Nolan. Too. Even if the Ravens had won that game, I kept saying it was a lose-lose situation because you lose, and now the narratives are, the Ravens can't win in primetime big games. They can't beat the Chiefs, yada yada. But even if they won, the narrative would have been, oh well, it's in the regular season. And what does it matter? They didn't do it in the postseason, so it was a lose-lose. But
yeah, that's what infuriates me. If they won last night, if this was the inverse of the result last night, if the Ravens blew the doors off the Chiefs, beat them by like 20 points, 30 points, everyone, oh, so what? Doesn't matter. Do it in the postseason. So just give me a break. Stop. So that's my rant. I'm done there. Let's just talk about Lamar and I guess Mahomes too. I mean, Mahomes was fantastic, looked unstoppable. Lamar, very ugly, possibly the ugliest game from him since his first start with the Ravens. I don't know if I can think of an uglier game off the top of my head. He had 97 passing yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, but he did fumble. He was sacked 4 times. Just bad. He did add 83 yards on the ground on 9 carries, which is actually a pretty good average. Some of those designed runs, some of those just scrambling, but still he was picking up big yards on the ground. Still a bad game overall. He gets some of the blame for me, but that just goes down to it being a complete team loss in my eyes. He doesn't get all the blame because the offensive line was garbage in some of the biggest moments of the game. I mean, it was the last time they went in the red zone. They gave up back-to-back sacks. Like, he had a guy in his face as soon as the ball was in his hands. Terrible offensive line play in crucial moments. Receivers. I counted at least 5 passes that hit a receiver in the hands or the chest, dropped. And those ranged from crucial first down conversions to a touchdown to Mark Andrews.
Which cost me a fantasy win, by the way. If he catches that, I would have won my fantasy game. But and then a dagger next. Of course, it goes to Boyle on the next drive for a touchdown. So that was just an extra dagger in my heart last night. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just needed to point that out.
No, I'm with you. Who I was playing, my cousin, I was matched up against him in fantasy, and he had Mahomes and Kelsey, and I had Marquise Brown, and I had like a comfortable lead at the point too. I was going to win, and Marquise had an awful game, and Mahomes went off, and the rest is history. So that's that. But, I mean, I don't know. The offense as a whole was just bad. They ran the ball pretty well at points, but couldn't stick with it for certain reasons, whether it because they were down by like 14 or 17 at any given time, or they just neglected to stick with it. But other than that, I mean, the receivers let them down. Offensive line let them down. Just a terrible game.
Yeah, I guess that's another direction we could go here. I mean, are you, along with like the pass rush and the lack of weapons? I mean, how concerned should we be about the offensive line? I mean, it's the second week in a row, I believe, that Lamar's been sacked 4 times. I'm trying to pull up like the sacks given up stats, and I don't know where exactly the Ravens rank there. It's clear that they do miss Marshall Yanda. I mean, it's hard though, because you've still got 2 of the top tackles in the game in Ronnie Stanley and Orlando Brown Jr. But and I think it's definitely going to take Tyree Phillips some time to establish himself as a pro. And he's only played 3 games, so I think we should cut him a little bit of slack. But it's kind of clear that this offensive line isn't what it was last year, and it's kind of hard to gauge. I think from a passing standpoint, especially, it's kind of hard to gauge the running situation because they kind of got away from that last night. So, but yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with everything else. Going back to, this whole narrative of not being ready to play in a primetime game, not being ready to play against the Chiefs, you do hold the coaches accountable and the game plans, and a lot can be said there for how the Ravens went, especially from an offensive standpoint and abandoning the run after their first drive. But you got to put something on the players too. I mean, I know Lamar didn't play his best game. He got absolutely no help from Hollywood or Mark Andrews. The same can be said for a bunch of guys on defense too. But and they still have time, and I have a feeling as we're going to see over the next few weeks when they play some cupcakes here that some guys like Andrews and Hollywood will rebound, and maybe we'll see like Willie Snead and Miles Boykin make some plays. But I mean, it's kind of 2 weeks in a row now where we haven't really seen a lot from the supposed top playmakers on offense in their passing game, and it's very clear that needs to change going forward. In addition to not being so quick to abandon the run, and I get it because you're playing a Kansas City team that's capable of putting up at least 30 points literally at any time. So maybe there is a little bit of pressure there, but I just get a little worried because they get away when they get down, they just get away from what they are. And when you do that and you're not used to playing in that mindset and you're playing this different way, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Sure. And they didn't stick with the run as much as we would have liked. You look at some of these rushing stats. I mean, Gus Edwards only got 4 carries, 39 yards, though, on those 4 carries. I mean, that almost 10 yards a pop. There was that one drive where they were giving him the ball, and he was just picking up, like, it looked like a first down every time. So he ran pretty well. Ingram got 7 carries for 30 yards. That's not terrible. Dobbins only 1 carry. That's pretty bad. I mean, I know we've got a committee going here, but, between the 3 of those guys, only 12 carries. Not good, and it's situational. You're down, 17 at the half, 14 at points in the second half. You can't run every down, but I don't know. It was working. So that's why, when it's working that well, it's almost like you've got a better shot picking up the first down, actually running it than passing it. So why not run it? I know from the standpoint of you want to score quickly, it may not seem like the best idea, but I don't know. The offense was just in a funk like the whole night. And there were times where in the second half, and we'll get into the defense in a second, but the defense got 2 big stops in a row, put the ball back in the offense's hands. They cut it to 7 at one point. But late in the fourth quarter, it was just, there was like no urgency. They'd pick up a first down, they'd get a little momentum going, and they just kind of stand around or they go back and huddle up. And I was just screaming at the TV, like, run a no huddle. Like, get this defense on its heels. The Chiefs are just playing, sitting back, protecting a lead, and you're letting them catch their breath after every play. Like, no, you got to pound it every single play, and you got to knock them off kilter. And it just no urgency, and then you end up getting a scenario where Lamar misses a target, and then you take 2 sacks in a row, and it's just the drive's over. Or you get in the red zone. They were 1 for 4 in the red zone, by the way. Only converted 1 of their 4 red zone trips for a touchdown. How about the one where Orlando Brown Jr. had a false start penalty on 3rd down? That backed him up. Now they got to kick a field goal. Just terrible stuff. I mean, they shot themselves in the foot every possible way they could. So just a terrible all-around performance.
I have it here, too. They've given up 10 sacks on the season, which is tied with the Washington football team and the Jaguars for 4th most in the NFL.
Yeah, it's bad. And that's with a quarterback who escapes a lot of sacks. And I think that's saying something because he's been, at least last night, he had no time to even think about getting away. The ball's in his hands and there's a guy in his face. And it's not a screenplay. So I don't want to hear that either. It's just bad offensive line play at crucial moments. I had given them credit through the first 2 games for playing a clean game, but then you get the false start at a crucial point in the game. That can't happen. So it's just awful, all around awful. It's got to get better. And to me, as far as the offensive line, like Tyree Phillips isn't even that big of a concern. My concern is Stanley and Orlando Brown Jr. I don't think they're playing up to the level that we expect them to. Like the guys in the middle, they'll give up theirs, sure. Skura still not 100%. Phillips, just 3 NFL games. Sure, say what you want, but I've expected much better from both Stanley and Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah, the sacks, 100%, especially for the first 3 games. I almost think too. I mean, there is something to be said too for Orlando Brown, of how impressive this guy was. I mean, let's keep in mind too, he had a future Hall of Famer playing right next to him and leading the way at right guard, pointing out things to him. And I'm sure, I hope that, who knows, he might still have like some phone conversations with Yanda. I'm sure Yanda's watching the games, but I'm sure that kind of hurts to not have a presence like Yanda right next to you. But yeah, the sacks has got to stop. I mean, Lamar, love him. He takes, I guess more hits than most quarterbacks do because of how much running he does. And the point I'm trying to make is, he takes enough hits, just running around. We don't need that being increased by getting sacked a lot. And the more that's going to happen, the quicker it's going to take for Lamar to wear down as the season goes on. I was almost flabbergasted at how, seamless he made staying healthy last year look through 16 games with the style at which he plays. And I'm not saying he can't do it. I mean, so far so good in terms of getting off the field, but you don't want to see him taking more unnecessary hits because of a struggling offensive line. And they have played some impressive fronts against Kansas City and Houston here. And, the Browns front seven on defense with Myles Garrett's no slouch either. But I think they might catch a little bit of a break coming up this weekend because I think Chase Young is going to miss this game, or at least it sounds like it at least. So maybe the number of sacks will decrease a little bit, but yeah, the offensive line has left a lot to be desired through the first 3 weeks. And if that's a reoccurring theme, I definitely don't think they're going to be able to come anywhere close to reaching the record numbers they did last year.
So one last thing on the offense, and you brought it up with Lamar post-game saying that the Chiefs ran a similar scheme to the Titans in the postseason, also called the Chiefs the Ravens' kryptonite. And I think people are taking those together, and that's also causing some panic for Ravens fans saying, oh no, the tape is out. This is how people stop Lamar. I'm not going that far. We heard that after the Chargers came in here and beat the Ravens in the postseason in 2018. Everyone said the tape is out. Well, 2019, he's the MVP. Now we get a Titans playoff loss and then this loss, and the people are going to say the same thing. The tape's out. They're beatable. I mean, obviously they're beatable. It's the NFL. Everyone's beatable. But everyone's going to start saying that this is the end for the Ravens' dominance. They might still win, but they're not going to crush everybody. Show me. That's all I'm going to say. Show me, and then we can talk, because it just hasn't happened. Like, these next 3 weeks, I'm expecting the Ravens to absolutely just demolish their opponents, especially this week. I mean, I'm predicting like a 30-point win against Washington, but we'll get into that later. So as far as like Lamar saying, they ran a similar scheme and that's what shut them down, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. I'm just trying to put myself in the mindset where I was back in January. I'm not seeing the similarities. Like, the drops should be evidence enough. Like, the guys were wide open. He hit Andrews open for a touchdown. Marquise Brown was open across the middle. Andrews open across the middle of the field. Those were big gains, things that could have jump-started drives, kept drives alive, built momentum. And you just flat out dropped them, let them bounce off your hands or your chest. That didn't happen against the Titans. I mean, you had the first interception that people said Andrews should have caught. The ball was floated a little bit. I'll still give you that. But other than that, I don't remember like blatant, flat-out bad drops. Marquise Brown played fantastic in that playoff game. He was catching everything left and right. I just thought the Titans played tremendous coverage in that game, and I'm not seeing the same thing from the Chiefs. They left the Ravens open at times, and the Ravens just shot themselves in the foot. So, I mean, Lamar knows more than me. He's actually on the field facing the defense, so I'll take his word for it. But from my perspective, I'm not like losing my mind like, oh, the tape's out and the Chiefs did the same thing the Titans did, and now everyone's going to do the same thing and stop the Ravens.
Yeah, and the problem I have with that specific kryptonite comp, or not the kryptonite, the one where he's talking about the Chiefs had a similar game plan as the Titans. The problem I have there is, okay, let's say it was similar. You had 6 or 7 months to look at that tape and figure out what exactly it was that caused them to beat you so badly. And the exact same result happened last night. And then you add the drops and the miss, the misplays on top of that. That's the issue I have is, okay, well, if they're not going to fix it over an entire offseason, if that same situation comes up with the defense doing what Kansas City and Tennessee did, are we just going to keep seeing the same thing over and over if they're not going to fix it over, the entire offseason? That's, it's okay for him to say that. Don't get me wrong. Like if that's a fact in his eyes that they did a lot of similar things that the Titans did, okay. But then, the problem I'm going to have is I'm going to get concerned because if they are, two very similar styles of defense, two very similar ways of defending this system, is that way of defending this offense just going to overpower them every single time? And until we see otherwise, I guess we have to say yes for now.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair criticism. I agree 100%. Like, if that truly was what the Titans were doing, like, shouldn't that have been your main focus the whole offseason? And then I don't know. I mean, I guess this is a good transition to the defense, because if we want to compare this to that Titans game from a Ravens defensive perspective, it was almost the exact opposite. They gave up everything through the air, and they actually did a pretty good job shutting down the run. If you look at the totals, Kansas City had 132 total, a little bit inflated by Mahomes scrambling. Tyreek Hill had 2 carries. They're pretty big. But as far as Edwards-Helaire and shutting him down, I know he's a rookie, but everyone's been hyping him up through 2 weeks so far. 64 yards on 20 carries. That he wasn't getting anything. I mean, every time they ran up the middle, the Ravens stuffed them. Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams were exceptional stuffing the run. I thought they shut down the run fantastic. So if you want to talk about comparing this from a defensive perspective to that Titans game, it was like the exact opposite. They shut down the run, whereas against the Titans, Derrick Henry ran for 1 billion yards. And
he just ran by my window, running to the end zone.
Did you hear
again.
that? What was that sound? But yeah, it was a complete opposite in that regard. But the big concern on defense, definitely the secondary. Peter sticks out as the worst, but just overall bad for the group. I saw Deshaun Elliott get burned on that one touchdown. Left the guy, who was it, Hardman, scored a wide open touchdown, and Elliott was struggling to keep up. I texted my dad. I said, I saw that 32 out there. Was that Eric Weddle? Did Eric Weddle come back and get burned again? No, just Deshaun Elliott. But, yeah, not good for that group on the day. And I guess you can give Chuck Clark credit. Generated a huge turnover in the second half, forced a fumble. But in my eyes, there were points in the first half where the secondary was like, all right, we're not stopping them. So, Kelsey's going to just get a big catch across the middle, and our goal should be not to tackle him, but punch the ball out, because that's our only chance of, stopping them. We're not going to completely cover them. We're not going to tackle well, obviously. Our only chance is to try to strip the ball or punch it out. And it was pathetic. I mean, it was just so many play after play after play, where the defense was just going for a turnover instead of focusing on giving up the big play.
Yeah, a lot of, I think it kind of says something when we look at the top 2 performances on this defense, coming from 2 guys over the age of 30, well over the age of 30, and Derek Wolfe and Calais Campbell. Not to take anything away from those guys, but I think you would like to see some of your younger playmakers, show up. And I did see, Jeff Zreback tweeted at one point last night that, Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison, the 2 rookie linebackers, obviously were on the bench late in the fourth quarter in favor of Chris Board and LJ Fort. After that happened, I did see Harrison back in the game. I don't think Queen came back out. I could be wrong there, but Queen was just entirely outmatched. We saw that with everything that was happening over the middle of the field with Kelsey among others. It's a rookie playing in his 3rd game. So I'm not too concerned about that. It's discouraging to see. I mean, obviously you don't want to see your first round pick sitting on the bench at the end of the game in that way, but that'll be that's the first time that's happened to him, and he had a rough night. So it'll be a learning experience, and he'll get back in, and I'm hoping that we see some rebounds from Patrick Queen over the next few weeks, because you never want to see that. But yeah, Marcus Peters had a terrible game. That was ugly Marcus Peters. We've heard about certain games where he's just looked completely out of sorts and gotten burned over and over again. That definitely happened. Surprisingly enough, they didn't seem to go, or Anthony Averett didn't seem to get burned that much. I was expecting a lot of what the Chiefs were going to be throwing to go Averett's way, and it seemed like most of it honestly was going towards the three more experienced corners in Jimmy Smith and Humphrey and Peters. Everything just seemed to be going there, and as well as him picking on Patrick Queen over the middle. But yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I didn't even think of it that way, where the Titans game was all about giving up 500 yards to Derrick Henry, and we look today, and it was all through the air with 385 yards from Mahomes and 4 touchdowns. And I'm sorry, but I just got to give the Chiefs all the credit in the world. I mean, I know Patrick Mahomes is only in his 3rd season, and I will admit, I get annoyed with all the constant, historic record-breaking stats that I see on the broadcasts. They even bring in Patrick Mahomes' mom and something she tweeted about at one point, which I could care less about what Pat Mahomes' mom is doing. Like, why do we even need to bring her into this? But this is his 3rd full season, and he already has an MVP and a Super Bowl, and just some of the stuff they're doing. I mean, he does have all these weapons. He definitely has a much better supporting cast in the passing game than what Lamar has. But yet Andy Reid still finds ways, like that pass to the fullback. And there was another pass that was just kind of like a sidearm or just like a backhand throw or whatever. I feel like I see something new from Mahomes almost every single week. And, I got to give him credit where credit's due. He's the best in the NFL. And the Ravens, they definitely saw that last night. And that's why I would say it is discouraging, because it was a big game, a primetime game, a home game against the Chiefs, and they got obliterated. But I think it also says something about just how good this Chiefs team is, and if the Ravens are going to beat them in the future, what it's going to take, because clearly whatever they brought Monday night, it just wasn't good enough.
Well, I'll tell you what it's going to take. It's got to start with the pass rush and actually getting home. Mahomes, no sacks, wasn't sacked at all. A lot of times, no pressure at all. And when there was pressure, he just gets rid of it at the perfect time, rolls out, first down. I mean, what the Ravens defense actually put Kansas City in 13 third down situations. 13 times they were in the third down situation throughout the game. The Chiefs picked up 10 of those 13, converted them for a first down. That's ridiculous. You got to stop them. I know, I'm sure quite a few of those were 5 yards or less on third down, but I can remember a few that were 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, maybe even a little bit more on a penalty. You got to stop them. And the moment where I just gave up all hope and wanted to just turn the TV off, I mentioned it earlier, Mahomes is dropping back. Bowser, I believe it was, came from the blind side. He was right there, got his arm up, looked like it was going to be a strip sack, game-changing play. And it's like Mahomes just gets rid of the ball. Like he's got eyes in the back of his head, or he's got a rear view mirror on his helmet. Like he knew just when to release the ball. And maybe it's luck. Maybe he knew. I don't know. But it's one of the most frustrating things in the world when you can't stop this guy on third down, and then you get a play from the blind side and he still gets rid of it just in time. It's infuriating. But he's good. He's great. We know that. He's been doing that since 2018. I mean, that's how they beat the Ravens in 2018. Lamar delivered what should have been a game-winning drive late in the game through a touchdown pass to John Brown, and then the defense gets, what was it, 3rd and 20-something?
Yeah, it was a long fourth down conversion,
he just
I believe.
Slings it on the run, hits Tyreek Hill. I'm done. I'm sick of it. Stop.
I want to mention something positive too, because there hasn't been a lot of it so far in this podcast. I've got a box of tissues next to me, and I'm coming very close to having to reach to it. But uh, one positive that came out of last night was we can put to bed this dumb, out of nowhere, just atrocious. I don't even know why it was a thing, honestly. This comparison between Harrison Butker and Justin Tucker, and some people were even calling Harrison Butker the best kicker in the NFL. Like, just take your fist and just shove it in your mouth. Like, that whole argument was ended last night. And that wasn't the only special teams. The good thing about the special teams, I mean, Devin Duvernay with that long kickoff return, that kid can fly. I'm not going to call him Jacoby Jones or anything, but man, it would be nice if, the Ravens had a weapon on special teams that, of speedy caliber like we saw from Duvernay last night. And Prochet had a nice punt return or two, but obviously in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter that much. I mean, it did get the Ravens out of a hole in the first half and put them within 3. And but yeah, I said to Tyler, I was like, now I know why John Harbaugh was pumping his fist during the drafting of Duvernay for the explosiveness like that. I mean, that was very quick.
Yeah, and they early in the game, I didn't see Duvernay involved much in the offense throughout the game, but they did hit him on that little end around where he was coming in motion, and Lamar just takes the shotgun snap and kind of just hot potato passes it to him as he's in motion. They ran that with Marquise Brown a lot last year. So I think they could see that with both Brown and Duvernay at times this year. Didn't get a first down, but I think it was like a 6 or 7 yard gain in the red zone. And then, I mean, what can you say about the kickoff return? It's perfect. It's the speed. I mean, it's been since, I guess, Jacoby, unless I'm blatantly forgetting someone, that the Ravens have had that kind of speed from a kick returner. And it was a huge play, kept things close early in the game. It was could have been a big momentum swing. I said in the moment, I was like, man, that was great and all, but I don't like that the defense has to go right back on the field after giving up a 7-minute touchdown drive. To their credit, they forced a punt on the next possession, but still, I didn't like that. But you take it, the touchdown, obviously. So, yeah, special teams, I'm with you 100%. As soon as Butker missed that first extra point, I was so happy. I mean, maybe the happiest I was all night, honestly, because, I mean, it was Tony Romo, too, who said it in that game. And he's the guy that we all kind of prop up as being super knowledgeable and everything. And, I mean, look, give Butker credit. He hit some huge kicks last week, won them that game. I mean, he was huge. 2 from to tie it from over 50 and then to win it from over 50. That's big, but come on. We're talking about Justin Tucker. Never missed I can't remember him missing a game-winning field goal or a crucial field goal late in the game. The only time he's messed up, we all freaked out when he missed that extra point against New Orleans. And, I mean, the reaction to that should tell you everything. The fact that everyone freaked out and that was the only talking point for a week, oh my God, Justin Tucker missed an extra point, should tell you everything you need to know. Because up until that point, we just thought he was, superhuman and could never miss. So that says it all. Butker, I'm sorry, he's a talented kicker, made some big kicks in his career, but no.
I'm not going to blame Tony Romo for what he said either, because, I mean, let's face it, when the Chiefs aren't on primetime TV, I mean, they've got Romo and Nance, the top CBS crew, calling their games. I mean, Romo's probably seen 37 Chiefs games and, how many Ravens games? 4? Like, since he got that gig at CBS. I mean, this just did prove my point. 2 weeks ago when the Ravens were playing the Texans, 2 AFC, previous 2019 division winners there, I would consider that a big game. They didn't get the top crew. The top crew was in LA for the first Chargers game. It played in SoFi Stadium, whatever it's called, against who but the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I'm not surprised that he made that comment, because he watches them every other week, it seems. But yeah, there really is no argument there.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Tony Romo. I still, compared to all the other crews out there, Him and Jim Nantz are great. But I've been saying this about Romo. Like, he picks a couple guys on every team that are just his guys, and he just props them up nonstop, and it's infuriating. And he did it with the Ravens. He did it with Michael Pierce in 2018. Every game he did with the Ravens, oh, Michael Pierce, this is the guy that anchors the defensive line. He's getting it done. He does everything for them on the defensive line. It's like, no, it's Brandon Williams, and they'll be just fine without Michael Pierce. And now Michael Pierce goes and gets paid. I said it when he got signed by Minnesota in the offseason. I said he owes Tony Romo a couple $1,000s, or at least a steak dinner, because the way he talked about him in those 2018 games was just ridiculous. Michael Pierce was a quality guy. That's it. He wasn't anything special. And Romo talked about him like he was Aaron Donald or something.
Speaking of commentators, do you like the new Monday Night Crew? I kind of like. I don't know too much about him, but Steve Levy's pretty decent. I mean, I'm not too familiar with his work, but I've enjoyed hearing his calls so far.
Yeah, they weren't bad last night. I mean, it's certainly better than what we've got in the last couple of years.
Right. Yeah. You could put somebody who calls baseball and put them in the Monday night broadcast, and they would do a better job than what we've had the past couple of years.
But yeah, last night they were pretty good. I thought there were a couple plays where they actually pinpointed something out on the replay that was actually insightful. Like, I was watching, I was like, oh wow, that is a nice pickup there. I actually learned something watching the game. So I'll give them credit for that. And no Booger McFarland, always a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up with we'll do a preview, but some other good things. We mentioned Duvernay. I had him down here. Calais Campbell was a monster as usual. Gus Edwards mentioned him. And Nick Boyle was the last one I wanted to mention. That was a nice touchdown grab. Not the best pass. I mean, it wasn't a terrible pass. It was catchable, but he didn't really lead him that much, and it forced Boyle to kind of wrestle with the defender and catch it. So I give him credit for that, because that cut it to a 7-point game. And after all the drops we had seen, after all of the offense stalling out in the red zone, for Boyle to kind of put the team on his back, so to speak, in that moment right there and haul in that catch, that was big for him. So those are my guys. I don't know if you had anybody else you wanted to highlight.
As far as good goes, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you could throw, Tucker in there if you wanted to, but there wasn't a whole lot of good last night, Nolan. Just not an impressive performance from many people. And like I was saying earlier, glad for Boyle. He doesn't catch too many touchdowns, so glad for him to get it. But I would have liked to see Andrews catch one. But that's a story for another day. That's more for selfish reasons, but it is what it is.
All right, one last good thing, and this is what I'm going to transition into a preview of this Sunday's game. The last bit of good news is I think we can all agree that the Ravens are absolutely going to bully the Washington football team this week. It would have been they still would have bullied them, win or lose this week, but the fact that they just got embarrassed on national TV, embarrassed by what should be a rival in Kansas City, they're going to come out angry. I'm expecting, I already said it, a huge win, 30 points. Offense, I'm expecting maybe little to no punting, just rolling with ease up and down the field. Defense, I'm expecting them to generate some turnovers. Haskins has been coughing up the football left and right. I think he threw like 3 picks against Cleveland last week. I mean, the Washington football team doesn't scare you really at all. The only area where they've been somewhat scary this year is maybe their pass rush, but then, Chase Young is obviously questionable right now. Sounds like that injury isn't super serious, so he is just questionable, but I don't know. Even if he does play, is he 100%? Without him, they've got some other guys, though. Ryan Kerrigan's still there, still a pretty good pass rusher, so that's kind of the only thing I'm looking out for, especially considering, what we were just talking about. The offensive line having a little bit of trouble the last 2 weeks protecting Lamar. Can they keep this Washington pass rush, which is one of their few bright spots? Can they keep them at bay?
Yeah, there really isn't too much to say about this game. I don't think, you've got one of the worst teams in the NFL matching up against a very pissed off team that's going to want to, show off after what happened last night. It's one of those games where I expect it to be over by halftime or early into the third quarter. I mean, hey, we might just see RG3 go up against his former squad. I'm sure that would be the team that drafted him. I'm sure that would be for him something that would be very nice to be able to come in the fourth quarter, or maybe not. Maybe Harbaugh will leave the starters in even though they're up 40 points throughout the entire fourth quarter. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I guarantee you, at some point throughout the next 3 weeks against Washington, Cincinnati, or Philadelphia, I would put money down that on some point we're going to be complaining about how long the starters are going to be left in the game. But I agree. 20, 25, 30 points, something along like that is what I'm expecting the margin to be with the Ravens on favor. I don't think it'll be close, and they'll be able to go on a quick up and down bus trip, score a couple touchdowns, and come back and then get ready for the next cupcake against the Bengals next weekend.
Well, oddly enough, you mentioned that, it's just 3 weeks into the year, but you look at these next 3 games, we're expecting a win in each one. But, coming into the year, I was kind of scared of that Philly game, or at least when the schedule was announced, I was kind of scared of that Philly game. And now without fans, it's a little bit different. And then obviously you see the way that the Eagles have been playing. I'm not scared at all. But Cincinnati, the scariest opponent of these 3, and really just because Joe Burrow's just kind of like a wild card. I mean, he's just out there slinging the ball around left and right. I don't know, something about that kid. I think he's a winner coming from LSU. I don't know. He could be a problem in the AFC North for years to come. He might not be a problem this year in the grand scheme of things. They obviously got to build a good team around him. But I don't know, man. He might be – if we're talking about – we thought it was going to be Baker and Lamar as the AFC North quarterbacks that go at it twice a year. That's exciting now that Big Ben's getting older and closer to retirement. I don't know. It might be Lamar versus Burrow. I think that might be the exciting quarterback matchup in the division.
Watching the end of that Eagles and Bengals game the other day, I'm going to be honest, like that was, I had Red Zone on, but just waiting for that game to end, like it goes the entire overtime period. There's constant commercials, there's constant reviews, there's constant penalties. And at the end, the Eagles just give in and punt it away to play for the tie. I'm going to be honest. After watching that, I almost didn't want to watch any football the rest of the day. That got me so depressed for just how long it took for that game to end, and to see the fashion and the way it ended. I was almost like, I don't know if I can take anymore after watching that. That almost ruined football Sunday for me of how poorly the Eagles played specifically.
That's funny because I actually felt the same way. I didn't even watch overtime. I turned it off after Wentz tied it up with a touchdown. I bet the over in the game, and the over hit on that touchdown, and I was like, this game sucks. I'm done with this. I was only watching it because I put money on it. And as soon as they scored that touchdown, I was like, I don't even care that it's going to overtime. This game sucks so bad. I don't even want to watch overtime.
Are you meaning to tell me, Nolan, that you're gambling now with that lucrative salary you're making over there at 105.7?
I went 3-0 this week on my picks.
Nice.
Big money.
I haven't reached the point of gambling yet, but I'm 0-3 in my fantasy league. I'm about ready to tank. If I go 0-4 here, it might be time. However, I have this weird habit of starting every fantasy season 0-4 or 1-5, and then making a comeback and somehow making the playoffs. But I think this year might be a little bit more challenging. I'll have to wait and see. But if I lose this weekend, I might just start throwing in the towel because it's a multi-year league. I might just start focusing on the future.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not playing for money in fantasy this year. I'll just say that. I'm 0-3 as well. So, score prediction for Washington, I'll put you on the spot just because I prepared mine. I'm gonna have fun with this. 44-10 Ravens dominate, beat the Washington football team, and that's my prediction.
I'll go a little bit go lower. I'll say like 38-13 or 38-17. It's, I'm not anticipating 40 points. I mean, if they get there, the great. I think it all comes down to how well the offensive line plays against the front of the Washington defense. But yeah, it's going to be a very large margin if you're going to bet on the Ravens, bet the over for them. But yeah, it's not going to be pretty down in where is it, Landover, Maryland, wherever the hell that stadium is. It's not going to be pretty for the Washington football team, that's for sure.
All right, and with that, we will wrap things up. Thank you to Jake, as always, for joining us. Keep doing these throughout the season when we can. And, we'll talk to you next week after, hopefully, an absolutely dominant win over Washington. But until then, we got to get through the rest of the week. That's one of the good things. You lost on a Monday night, one less day before the Ravens play their next football game, just a little bit shorter. But we'll take it, and we'll be here talking to you next week. Thank you, as always, for listening.